look fancy today.
Okay.
Oh my gosh, Chris, you're wearing a fancy shirt. You're not wearing a cutoff, and it doesn't have like a motorcycle gang emblem or anything
Well,
like
I
that.
never wear. Come on, David. I never do that. But I often do wear T-shirts. But it's cold out today. I gotta wear a little extra.
It is cold out for North Carolina, and I'm not too happy about that either. I even put the heat on in the office.
Yeah. I did too earlier today. And later today I'm gonna go for a bike ride. But why don't we get into this? People don't want to hear about
bike ride. Well, that's a product launch, is a bike ride, maybe kind of. So we're going to talk about, first off, product managers. You should be listening to this. Every single person who does product management to customers direct should really be listening to this. So let's talk about when product launches go off the rails, then how do you rescue and recover? And if there is a single product manager out there that has said, I've never gone off the rails before. Yeah, then you're not a product manager.
I know, and if they do disruptive technology, if it doesn't go off rails, if it does go off rails, they're not doing disruptive tech.
That's right, and that's what Chris could add to the table. Chris can add not just the launch stuff, which can be hard enough, but add the added element of the disruptive product launch, which you can dig in all the stuff that Chris talks about. So let's talk about this, Chris, and I love this part of it. I talk to people about this all the time.
Yes, I know you do.
Great plans meet the market.
Yes.
Great plans meet the market. Man, people don't realize the market. He's an evil monster.
Well, it's either your biggest monster or your best friend, right?
Yeah, you gotta respect it. So here's the scanning. Every launch looks good on paper.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes,
I agree with that.
Yes.
Yeah, a lot of product managers are great with Excel. They're great with PowerPoint. Great with flow diagrams and all that good stuff, and then poof.
Yeah, you gotta love the revenue plans that look like this, right?
Oh yeah. The entrepreneurs are good at that too, baby. The hockey sticks. Okay, until this thing hits the market, what's going on? Every launch looks great until it hits the market. What's going on?
So, and that's exactly, Dave. And with and we talk about failure here, and where they go off rails and failure, but you shouldn't be surprised when you hit road bumps or you go off course on launching a disruptive technology. Actually, you should embrace it, because with disrupt tech, by definition, Dave, you're doing something you've never, ever, no one's ever done before. If you're doing something truly disruptive. So, this idea of a failed launch or a problem, you should embrace the failure, embrace the missteps, because that's part of the learning process you have to go through. So
that's first off. So you, as a product manager, if you don't have an iterative mindset, then you got some struggles going to be happening, because you can't expect that piece of paper and maybe your initial research is going to hit the marketplace like gold. If it does, you're a lucky dude, or do that. You're a lucky person.
Well, that's just pure luck. If it's disruptive and you execute like you planned it out, that is just pure luck. And the chances, that's like the chances of hitting the lottery, David.
It really is. I mean, I got that. I'm with you on that. I mean, I launch smaller iterative stuff, probably a little different than some folks on the call. And man, even a small iterative launch can be chaotic and fall apart. And the market just spits it up, even though I thought it was the best laid plan since mice and men.
Yep. And then
I learned to fall in love with success instead of the idea, the concept, or how great of a process I built. I turned my mindset over to falling in love with the success that the market tells me, nothing else.
Yep. And that's why it has to be iterative, because if you get attached to your plan, as soon as you go off plan, then the reaction is something's wrong here, instead of, of course we went.
Nobody wants this crap.
What's that?
Like, can you honestly tell yourself sometimes nobody wants the crap you came up with? The market tells you that. It drives me crazy sometimes. It's like,
but you should expect that to happen. Well, this is something we haven't planned to talk about, but the greatest one I heard, this entrepreneur said, this is how disruptive or innovation gets accepted. First of all, you're out of your blinking mind. This is the stupidest idea ever. Mm-hmm. This might be interesting, but really there's not a big market for it. Mm-hmm. And then when you actually become successful, they say, oh, I had this idea all along. I told you this was going to happen. But the immediate reaction is going to be no. Always, 100%, especially when you're selling to the early majority or beyond. they're always going to react no to disruptive or technology. So,
Yeah.
That's part of the process. But
Exactly. And for me, it's always been learning ultimately, though, when to cut bait as well. So in non-disruptive products, you do have to be smart in when you cut bait instead of sit there thinking you can make the world do whatever you think the world's going to be able to do. You're going to make the world do what you
that's
want
a
it to do.
tricky one. But I think a lot of times on that one, there's a lot of, if you don't go into this with a discovery mindset and the other mindset, there's going to be a lot of false messaging that you should cut bait.
Yeah.
So you've got to kind of sort through what the core is.
And you have to be smart about whether you're doing the disruptive launch or not, too. Like if you're doing the disruptive launch, you're going to have a lot of false negatives.
Yeah, when you're doing disruptive, yes. And if you're looking for if you're looking for execution and you hit a roadblock, then those false negatives are going to be, they're going to be listened to like something's wrong here and this product doesn't work.
No. But when you're doing a regular launch within your current set,
that's
you do
a
have to be
different
careful.
story.
Yeah, you can't go too far down the pipe with the market telling you something. You just keep trying to shove it in the market's throat. Correct. If it's within your wheelhouse, if it fits your current repeatable sales process, if it fits your database and nothing's happened, you can't try to drive that through.
No, exactly. No. And but that's where you have to figure out what type of product.
That's why product managers have to understand this. They have to understand what a disruptive product is, the launch for a disruptive product, and how different that is for the launch and the launch success of a normal product.
Right. But then with the disruptive product, you got to figure out whether the product is wrong, just completely wrong, and doesn't work for the market you're going into. Separate from, are you kind of sort out how to sell into that market? What's the repeatable sales motion to figure out? Those are two different things. And if you're, a lot of times people will take that message that the market's not responding when they haven't figured the repeatable sales motion yet, and they'll take it that the product's wrong. They'll cut the bait too long. I think
and this is what happens.
I think there's millions of products out there that have failed and have been put on the shelf just for that reason.
Yeah, you talked about the Fred Sanford, the medical equipment. I always loved that concept. Yep. Someday Chris is going to become Fred Sanford, have all the the junkyard full of medical equipment that failed, and he's going to be selling it with him in Lamont. A lot of you folks don't know what Fred Sanford is, but if you do, you know what I'm talking about.
No, I remember it well. But I think there's a lot of, not so much me, but I think those products are sitting in big companies or sitting in failed startups that should have succeeded.
Yeah.
If they had figured
out. What I get at those, I want to make sure product managers know, look, we're going to be talking about failures and risks in disruptive and failures and risks in traditional launches. You've got to know and think differently. Like when Chris starts talking about disruptive, your marketing group may not be your best friend in the disruptive product launch.
Well,
your product marketers might not be your best friend because they might not know what's going on. They might know the market. You got to help them find this.
And your VP of sales may not be your best friend.
They might be the worst friend.
It might be your worst friend.
This is never going to work. My people are never going to sell this. This is stupid. I'm not going to touch this thing with a 50-foot pole.
Yeah, and honestly, for a VP of sales, that's actually the right response if you don't hand it to them with a repeatable process to deliver it to the marketplace. If you know what the VP of sales,
now you're being nice because I would say
his team is designed to execute a proven sales process. If you hand it to him without that, he should throw it back in your face.
And the thing I would say is, well, Mr. VP of sales, he or she should understand that you have to be hitting the disruptive market as well. But that's other sessions that we tried, and we find that sales managers don't have it necessarily processed this appropriately.
Well, that's a big. Okay, go ahead.
What are the silent killers? So, what are the silent killers of early traction? Remember, when you're talking about this, tell us when it's a disruptive early killer versus a normal early killer. So you're called in. Hey, Chris, I need some help. Hey, Chris, I need some help. That's usually behind someone calling you and saying, hey, we need some help.
So there's a couple things. One is the biggest thing I see is overconfidence in the assumptions they've made in their launch plan. And usually those assumptions around things like their ICP or their market entry point, the sales cycle. Well, at the product launch, the sales cycle is going to be always the longest it's ever going to be because you're trying to figure out. And I kind of think of this is we start writing the the launch plan, we start putting together the revenue models that go along with it. You figure out, we take our customer discovery and figure out who our ICP is and start building our marketing tactics around that. And we actually drink our Kool-Aid.
Yep.
And as soon as you hit the market, if you're listening to the market, you're gonna learn where your assumptions were right, where your assumptions wrong, and where you build assumptions into your plan that you weren't even aware about. If you don't go in it with that mindset, then you just keep pressing forward with the plan you already had. And that's why I call it, for the first one is they buy into the assumptions. The second one I see that, and this is this one just drives me crazy. It's called premature scaling, where they scale up all their sales and marketing, and you see this huge increase in burn.
So here I'm a product manager, so I'm still trying to figure things out. But meanwhile, you're hiring a bunch of salespepeople to sell something.
It's the biggest, and
I still haven't figured out who was going to buy it and why they're going to buy it.
Who's going to buy it? Who's going to buy it? What the messaging is to get the attention? What's their core problems? And that's a big shift from a marketing marketing positioning. You're selling into problems when you're launching a disruptive product, not selling into benefits.
Yeah.
And that's a huge shift in marketing. So, so those are and if you. So what are some of the early what are some early signals you can catch on early to catch this early? One is
ding, 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 ding.
Exactly. When the launch, you go out early enough that you're not so far down the pipeline that you've already, you've already lost your, you lost your R&D team, you've lost executive management, you started losing customers, before or your investors. So a couple things. One is when I hear that the whole sales organization is underperforming, the whole thing, that's usually not a performance.
That's a launch issue. That's a launch. So for me, if it's a non-disruptive product, I'm like, you build something none of your customers want. If it's a disruptive product, it's like, there's something going on here. We need to reevaluate. We need to relook. You didn't do your discovery right.
And we didn't set up our sales team to.
Yeah, we didn't do your discovery right. So guys, remember, and gals, people, you got product management, and I think that we don't teach this right, is the fact that we don't look at it and say, is this a product that fits within your normal sphere of influence, or is this a disruptive product that's not within your wheelhouse, that maybe even be destroying your current product?
Yep. Which in some cases you should be embracing that.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
But
and guess what? Even if it's destroying your current product, it might not be your current customers that buy this new thing. It might be a whole other set of customers that buy it.
So it's, if you treat all your product launches the same and you actually think you're doing disruptive, you're disrupting your market anyway, you're
now you're getting that. So when we talk to product managers, Chris, this is what we have to be thinking about. We got to remind them that, look, we know you do launches.
Yes.
You do traditional launches all the time, right?
Yep.
Great. And then there's mistakes there. That's my cup of tea. I can talk about that all day long, right?
And that's like 80% of launches are that.
Yeah, that's right. And that's where I get you. You drink your own. You drink your own Kool-Aid. You keep trying to push, and you realize the market doesn't care. You got to cut bait early.
Then you got to cut bait on that.
Yeah,
correct.
And then we could talk through that later on as well. But what we're really getting at here, folks, is that when you start as a product manager and you're doing a launch of a disruptive product,
correct,
you got to watch your false negatives.
You got to watch it. Well, you got to even step back before that. You got to approach it completely different than every other product launch. Instead of an execution mindset, you got to go in with a
discovery mindset. You're learning. It's a learning process.
It's a learning process.
And product managers think they're know-it-alls.
What's that?
Too. Product managers think they're know-it-alls too. Believe me, I'm a product manager, and I always think I'm a know-it-all.
Well, the VPs of sales are probably worse than the product manager.
Yeah, but I tell you what, it's like if I know this industry, I know what goes on. This might be a disruptive product, but I know this industry.
Right. Yeah.
So Lee has something to say, but let's keep down this pathway. So what you're saying is we got to discover. There's false negatives all over the place.
Yes.
And we have to discover and learn.
We want to early on. We want to pull those false negatives to us because there's knowledge in that. There's education in that. And we're learning that every negative is a learning point instead of a problem or a mistake or a failure. every time you're launching Joseph, every piece of information should be a learning experience to learn.
And I know Lee's situation pretty good. So Lee, you walked in a company that's used to selling this type of product to this type of customer. You're going into a new product, selling something new, and there's just the corporate disruption. It's not necessarily the customer disruption. The corporation isn't going to quite understand why you're going after these people. Why are you selling it that way?
Right.
So really, Lee, as you start going into this, you have to discover these things, and you got to over communicate it because people aren't going to believe in it. And so what we're saying, but if you're doing disruptive product, like Chris and I are saying, that, yeah, you have to give the information to sales, marketing. There has to be connectivity, but you have to learn what information to give to them. Yeah. You actually don't even know what to give to them yet, because your current repeatable sales process isn't going to work for that disruptive product.
But here's a little nuance to this, David. You have to be doing sales to do this. So this is not, you can't just, it's just not a product management.
Well, that's where we debate, right? Because this is the crossroads, right? So a true product manager, they should wear a sales hat, but they don't.
Well, if they're launching disruptive technology, they have to.
All right, say that louder. Say that louder.
If they're launching disruptive technology, they have to be sales, or they have to have a sales team. Ideally, the ideal world in my mind is to have a sales team for launching disruptive tech. That's a whole other conversation.
In this launch. So if I'm launching a disruptive product, I'm either a product manager who can actually talk to customers.
Yes, and sell, not just talk, but close.
Yeah, they can actually close them if they get to that level, and they have to understand how they closed them. They got to look through. They got to critically think through the process that got from having a conversation with a customer to the close.
Yes, but that's part of the learning the sales.
That's part of Or they have a sales team that they can coach.
Yes, and manage. Yep.
And they have to. And here's the skinny. They actually have to listen to the salespeople when they come back and tell them things. Sometimes product managers don't listen to salespeople.
Well, as we get into how you fix it, that's the first place you start.
I know product managers, man. I sometimes some sales. I'm like, I ain't listen to that dude. That dude don't know. That dude, that person doesn't know what they're talking about.
So say that again, David.
So as a product manager, there have been times I don't listen to the salespeople.
Well, that's
I don't know what they're talking about.
Manager. I've seen this happen with sales leadership and companies across the board. They don't listen. And honestly, when you're going into when you're trying to solve and get back on track, that's the only place. There's two places where the data is to answer those questions on how to get better. One is, it all lives in the market, bottom line.
Yep.
And it sits with the customers. But the biggest place that people, that the answers to the questions everybody's has to answer to figure this out to get the success. And the one that people don't pay attention is the sales reps. They probably have more information even than
they have all the information.
They have all the information. So when I'm going in, when I'm doing a project like this for a client, David, the first thing I'll do is I don't want to talk to management. I want to hear what management thinks is going on, but I honestly do not give much validity to that because I know that's not the true answer. I know.
Okay, so we're going to get into stop the bleeding. So you're called in, you walk in, everybody's finger pointing.
Yeah.
Everybody's finger pointing. That happens all the time.
Yep.
All right. Where do you start? What do you do?
Well, for the very first thing I do, and this is going to sound antithetical to especially the sales, but you got to stop and pause.
Yeah, this is a big one. So believe me, if I was doing this, if you were in one of my companies and you said stop and pause, I might just snap at you.
Yeah, and yes.
But you have to. But if it's a disruptive, you got to come and say, dude, it's a disruptive product. You didn't realize it was a disruptive product. You got to stop because you're.
So here's the question I would ask of management: show me the proven sales process you put in place and the evidence that it works, and the data that shows me it works that you've handed to your sales team to execute against. If they can't answer that question, I said, without that, I guarantee you 100% your sales team will fail. Period. No ends, ifs, or buts. So in that moment, you have to stop and pause and say, and so what? And then what? The VP of sales or the sales manager say, no, we're going to sell harder. We're going to try new pricing. I'm going to put more. I'm going to bring my team and get them fired up.
We're going to have a big old rah-rah session. New packaging.
Yeah, right. We're going to try a new marketing channel. So you're going to sell harder. That is the Helen Keller, right? Doing the same thing over and over again, getting the same, expecting a different result. So honestly, Dave, the first thing you have to do is you have to stop and pause for a minute. And then the second thing you do, and this is how I approach these. I will get out in the field with the sales team, and I'll make sales. I'll call on new prospects. I'll call on existing customers. If I can, I'll call on customers that they've called on that they haven't closed. And I'll just dig in and figure out what they know and they don't know about what the repeatable sales process. And I'll figure out where they are in developing their repeatable sales process from beginning to end. I'll figure out where, as an organization, they stop and where the initial gap is. And then at that point, now you have an action point. This is the next thing we have to solve to start figuring out sales motion.
All right, so here's the skinny. You go in, it's bleeding, so it's kind of reform.
Yep.
The mindset and disruption is learning.
Yeah.
The mindset and disruption is learning.
Instead of execution, it's learning.
It's learning. And disrupting and learning, we know the best place to learn is as close to the market as possible. And who's the closest person in your building to the market?
Well, there's two people, right? The sales team and the delivery team.
Well, yeah, the delivery team, but we won't get
into that. That's another.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, so so Lee, in our world, that's our instructors. So the instructors do see things in disruption that we wouldn't normally see.
But we only have 30 minutes today, so we're not.
We're not going to get into that. All right.
But the simple answer for the sales motion, it's your sales reps.
It's your sales reps. They are the closest to the customer.
Correct.
The closest. Correct. All right. So product managers do have a tendency to be more aligned with marketing than sales. So
well, marketing's 99% of the time when I go, marketing's completely off the mark here.
Okay.
Because they're not the one
in how about this one? In a disruptive product launch.
In a disruptive product launch.
Yep. They would have made assumptions.
Unless the only time that isn't happening is when the marketing people are talking directly with customers.
Oh no, it's like when a blind squirrel finds a nut. Like that's what happened. Disruptive product launches when marketing is not talking outside the box of what they're used to working within.
Correct.
The only time you succeed is when a blind squirrel finds.
That's the only time, exactly.
Right.
But so marketing. So you have to go again. You have to go. There's only two places that I go. I go to the customers and the sales reps.
Yeah, and it's through the sales reps and maybe. Okay, so now you come in, you slow things down.
Yep.
So how do you rebuild alignment and momentum? So you slowed things down. You're starting to talk to customers. All right, how do you do this?
So first, and then I say slow down. It'll take 30 to 60 days to kind of do the diagnostic stage. You get out there and figure out where the gap is and where the gap is. And as soon as you know where the gap is in developing the sales motion, now you have something to work on that if you fill that gap, it's gonna launch your sales force forward.
Let me ask you this question. In disruptive products, is it sometimes the gap is a missing element in a feature or the function of the product that you have to go back and add?
So the kind of three things I look at when I do it. One is I see if the product just doesn't work for the market for some reason. And that if you're talking with customer sales reps, you'll find that out in the first 3 calls. You'll know the answer to that question. Most of the time, it's not that. Then the second question is, do you have the right people selling for you? And as we talked about it, that's usually not the problem either. Usually where the problem falls, it falls in the sales process.
Okay.
That's usually where it ends up falling. And then you got to figure out what step in the sales process it is where things are getting, it's just like anything else, where the bottleneck is. You figure out where the bottleneck is. As soon as you start from that bottleneck, then things start moving forward. So so in answer to your question, it's usually not a product and feature, but you've got to map the product and where it is today to the right ICP in the marketplace to solve that problem. So it gets a little complex, but that is not a product issue. That's a sales motion issue, not a product issue. 9 times out of 10. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. And what I try to get at with disruptive product as we talk sometimes is, when in disruptive product launch do you cut bait?
So
Did you follow your agile market entry
so
disruptive
if I
product launch?
can find a market entry point, most people call it beachhead market. If
Yeah.
I can find a problem that my market has to solve today that's going to pull my product into the marketplace, if I don't find that, then I've got a big red flag, because that's going to be, it's, for a disruptive product, you're changing so much, not just with what you do with product, but the behavior of your customers and how they solve their problems a lot of times, that if you don't have that core, that must solve problem that's going to pull that technology in, you're going to have a very hard time selling it. So as soon as I hit that point, then I know either have to pivot or bail.
Yep.
Right.
That's
That's 9 times out of 10. That's where the problem lies early on with these companies.
So as we look at this, we got to remember that you have typical product launch within your core product sets and incremental updates within your core product sets. There's one mindset there, and then we have disruptive product launches.
Yep.
And so we both will go off the rails. And Lee, what you're saying is, in a typical product launch within a product that fits in your segment, most of the times it goes off the rails because of lack of alignment. There's no communication between the sales to the product management, to the marketing group. There's misalignment. Marketing doesn't quite understand what product management was doing to the product. The ICPs weren't set up, so you're messaging your current database the wrong way.
Yep.
But you can still sell it with your repeatable sales process.
Yep.
What we're getting at here is, when product launches of disruptive products go off the rails, the reality is it's usually because you're using the wrong sales and marketing repeatable process.
Correct.
You're using the wrong sales repeatable. You have to readjust your repeatable sales process, your RSP. Right.
And I'd be a little careful about using the term wrong, David, because when we talked about this, I want to pull right and wrong, bad, failure out of this. I want to go, when I'm in the discovery mindset, when something doesn't work or it's wrong, that's a learning moment to point me in the direction to what will work. That's right.
That's right.
Be careful, because a lot of times this right-wrong mindset lives in that execution. So when I hear people trying to fix problems, when I hear people trying to, I'm doing with a client right now, we're launching a product into the aerospace, and we're really careful about how we language it, that making sure that we're learning every time. Even when we fail, quote unquote fail, we're moving forward because we're progressing.
No. Right. For me, I get very, I've gotten very choppy lately. I've gotten very impatient lately, right? And I work mostly within the realm of new products within the current box, right?
Yep.
Although I do play with some new repeatable sales processes, but that's a little bit of the difference. But what I always embrace, that when you talk about things going off the rails, I've truly come to embrace the importance of the sales process. Because and I've seen all of my recent failures with regard to launches and startups has been around, we didn't map the right sales process to what we were trying to sell.
Correct.
Right.
And that's not something you can do often. If you're doing disruptive, you can't map that before you're selling. You've got
and we didn't have enough time to discover
plane while you're freaking flying it.
And he didn't have enough time to discover, and the company doesn't understand it. So here's the other problem you face as a product manager who's looking at this. If your company doesn't understand this, they're going to think you're a freak.
So here's the challenge. So when you stop and pull back and you get to the core problem, you've got to get leadership and management on board to do that.
And they're going to be like, what? What's that?
Someone asked me recently, how do you get the sales team on, how do you get the sales team on board, and how do you get...
This is why this works much better in entrepreneurial environments than it does in large company environments. And this is also why large companies only stay on the S&P 500 for 12 years instead of 30 years, because nobody listens.
And it's also why they don't do disruption, why they outsource it and they bring it in later on, or why you
they spin in.
or
They do the spin out, spin in.
acquire a company that's got something disruptive and they kill it because they don't know this.
You know,
but here's the other thing: they won't stay on the S&P 500 if they don't do it, because I mean, look at the world. Growth happens around disruption. Profits and margins happen around disruption.
Yeah.
And we all know this.
Well, you get margin magic. Disruption gives you margin magic because people can't break down the costs. And that's the thing. I mean, that's what you want. If you can find something in disruption and drive it with a new sales process. And for me, AI and this new MCP thing, the multi-context protocol, it's a true disruptor that can create margin magic for a number of years and do what the Apples do of the world and charge us $2 a month for storage, and they're making $1.999995 for every. That's margin magic.
But AI is going to have the same problem. You know, these companies selling AI products are going to have the same problem when they're doing disruption. They've got to figure out the repeatable sales motion too.
So what I think we do is, I think maybe next session we work on together is kind of helping product managers start seeing the differences when a product is actually a normal product launch within their area and what's a truly a disruptive product and what that looks like. We could talk a little bit about that with them as well, and then get deeper into the repeatable sales process, because that's the tough part, is right. Because we talked about the bimodal sales organization. As we pushed that out there, we didn't get much traction because I don't think people understand it. But if you want to do disruption, you do really need two sales organizations.
But that's why we kind of started poking at product managers, right? Because they kind of own this. They kind of own this, and when it fails, it lands on their desk.
So maybe we can. So the thought process, maybe we can start stimulating some action at this level instead of the sales action, because they just end up getting fired. That's
exactly. So I agree with you. I think let's start figuring out how to kind of tease out what type of product they have.
Yes.
And then also, I think, and we talked about the challenges and the problems that they run into. Maybe we can start talking a little more deeper about how we solve those problems.
Yeah, that's a good point as well. Well, we really appreciate it, folks. It's a little bit past 30-minute time mark. Now this is recorded. You can play back, send it to friends and family. Anyways, thank you all. Have a great one. Appreciate your attendance.
Thanks, everybody. And remember, the answers are in the market.